the seeds of peace and Russia and Ukraine come from recognizing that, as unfortunate as it is, and Russia shouldn't have invaded Ukraine in the first place, both the Russians and the Ukrainians are exhausted. They're both struggling to find men, because primarily men in those countries that are fighting the war, but they're struggling to find women too. They're struggling to get the equipment necessary to send to the front lines. Their economies are exhausted. Whole parts of their country have been destroyed. Both of these parties want this war to end. And I think, unfortunately, you've got a lot of American leaders who like to beat their chest and say, well, this is the good guy and that's the bad guy. Look, yes, Russia should not have invaded Ukraine, but we are where we are. And what's in the best interest of America and what I believe is in the best interest of Ukraine and Russia is for the killing to stop. The longer this goes on, the worse it risks becoming a nuclear war. It risks engulfing the entire European continent. I mean, we talked about food prices earlier. Ukraine produces a large amount of the world's food supply. If this war goes on for much longer, you're going to have whole continents, I mean, Africa, Europe, that are starving because we're prolonging a war instead of bringing about peace. And I think the specific plan is you've got to get the Russians and the Ukrainians. You got to get them in a room together. You have to engage in actual diplomacy, which unfortunately our current leadership is completely unwilling to engage in diplomacy. And you ask the Ukrainians, what do you need? And you ask the Russians, what do you need? And you try to force them to come to a peaceful settlement. It could look different ways. It's going to depend on the skills of the negotiator and what their needs are at that moment in time. But I actually think that with Donald Trump's leadership, we can get to a peaceful settlement in Ukraine very quickly.